Well, hi, great to see you. It's another lovely day on the Costa. I moved here about 6 months ago now. So what I thought I would do on this video is reflect a little bit on my move and focus on some of the things that I wish I had known before I left England. So I've put together a list of 6. So before we start, can I please ask you, please subscribe. It does so much for the channel and I would very much appreciate it. I wish I had known how difficult it can be to get things delivered down here in the Costa del Sol. So when I left the UK in January, I boxed up all my belongings into 6 boxes and handed them over to the courier, expecting to see them maybe 4 or 5 days later here in the Costa. You've guessed it, haven't you? That didn't happen. It was more like about 6 weeks. So what happened? Well, the first 2 things that happened was that, first of all, they seemed to get held up in customs for about 2 weeks. They didn't move at all. The other problem en route was that one box always seemed to go missing. And if one box goes missing out of a set of 6, then they all wait for the missing box to turn up again. Kind of makes sense, but when a box keeps going missing, it's going to severely delay your delivery. So those 2 things put me back weeks. But then there was a bigger problem. The problem is down here in the Costa is that you maybe send your goods by, say, DHL in England, and they come across into Europe, and then when they hit Spain, they may only go so far with DHL. Certainly when they get down to the Costa, DHL do not come this far. At some point before they hit the Costa, they will subcontract it out to a local company. Now the problem is, depending on where you live, if you don't actually live at a street address, in my case I'm in an urbanisation, a gated community, so there's no street address. They will not come anywhere near you. They won't even attempt to make a delivery. They will just hold on to it. So how do they get around it? Well, fortunately, there are lots of delivery points along the Costa where you can give the address to the courier, and the delivery points are actually street addresses, so there's no problem there. They will deliver it to whichever one you give them the details of, and then when it's delivered, you just pop along, pay a fee, of course, for each box, and pick up your boxes. So that's what I did. But as I say, the whole process took me about 6 weeks. I didn't think I was going to see those boxes again. I wish I had known before leaving that after I got my visa, I would not be allowed to leave the country and return. So what's all this about? Okay, so what happened is it took me about 3 months to get my visa, which is obviously about 90 days. So by the time I had got my visa, I had used up all my 90-day allowance. Now, I thought that once I got my visa, that would not then be a problem. I thought after I had my visa, that I would then be able to freely leave the country and return. Once again, no. Once you have your visa, that then allows you to apply for your TIE. And it's your TIE card that allows you back into the country. So having the visa alone is no guarantee of being allowed back into the country. Now, getting the TIE, again, can take months and months and months, typically 3 or 4 months. So you've got a gap there, haven't you, from getting your visa to getting your TIE, which can be 3 or 4 months very easily. And during that time, chances are you have used up all your 90 days. So during that period, technically, you are not allowed to leave Spain. Well, you are allowed to leave anytime you want, but you're not allowed back in again. So how can you get around it? Well, there is, thankfully, a form you can apply for, and it's called a regresso form. Now, getting one of these can be very, very difficult, certainly before you've had your first TIE meeting. Once you've had your first TIE meeting, it becomes a lot more simple. But that period between you getting your visa and then applying for your TIE and getting your first appointment, that is almost almost impossible to get a regresso form, apparently. However, I did manage to get one after my fingerprint appointment, fortunately, because I had lots of trips planned. So fortunately, I'd made my trips. But you do need to be very, very careful. If you've got trips planned, you need to make sure that you do not fall into that period between getting your visa and attending your first TIE appointment where you have your fingerprints taken. Because during that period, you may be in trouble. Of course, when you come back in, all that happens at the moment is passport control, flick through your passport, and if they don't count up your stamps and count up the days, then you won't have a problem. But if they did, then they probably wouldn't allow you back in again. But of course, this new system is now coming into force, this new electronic system where it takes your fingerprints at passport control. Now, once that is in, then that will be automatic. They will know when you are over your 90-day limit, and it will be automatic. You will not be allowed in. So going forward, you do need to be extra careful that you do not leave the country and attempt to come back in during the period of getting your visa and getting your TIE card if you are over your 90 days. Okay, so the next one on my list. I wish I had known that I would be forced to sell my caravan that's in England. So, I had a caravan in England which I kept in Cornwall, and my plan was to leave it there in Cornwall in storage, and when the summers get too hot here, I would then drive over in my car, which would have to be my Spanish car, of course, because I can't keep my English car here, so I would have a Spanish car. The plan was in the summers to drive over in my Spanish car to England, and I could then hook up my caravan in Cornwall and spend a nice summer in the cooler weather in Cornwall, in England, in my lovely caravan. No. Apparently, and I didn't know this, that caravans in Spain are very different to caravans in England, in as much as in England, caravans are not registered. And all you have to do in England is when you tow them, is you just get a number plate made with your car reg, you slap it on the back of your caravan, and away you go. No messing. Not here in Spain. Different rules. A caravan here in Spain is treated just like a car. It has its own registration plate, and it also has to have an MOT, just like a car does. So therefore, you are only allowed, it is only possible to drive a Spanish caravan with a Spanish car, because you can't just take the plates off or create another plate of a Spanish car and slap it on the back of your caravan in England, because you won't be insured. So that ruled that out. The other option I had, of course, was bringing the caravan over here to Spain and using it in Spain. But of course, that's not possible because you have to import it. And to import a caravan is extremely expensive because of all the taxes and because you have to have it modified to meet the Spanish regulations. It's just not feasible. So, having the caravan here in Spain was not practical either. So the only option I had was to sell the caravan. I wish I'd known how expensive second-hand cars are to buy here in Spain. They're extortionate. Why? Well, it appears that here in Spain, when somebody buys a car, they buy them new and they keep them for life. They don't sell them. So there are very, very few second-hand cars on the market. When one does come on the market, it tends to be very, very expensive indeed. It's not really worth buying a second-hand car. You either buy a new one, or you maybe import your one from England, which is what I've done, or I'm in the process of doing. I'm having problems with that at the moment. I may tell you about those another day. I didn't do my research fully, but I'll get there. It's not the end of the world, but you just need to be aware of it. Okay, number 5. In fact, 2 more to go. Now, these last 2 aren't really major issues or things that I particularly needed to know, but I'm going to throw them in. The first one is, I wish I'd known about the ant season. Yes, the ant season. We're now into July. It's getting hotter. It's getting hotter all over Europe, actually. But here in Spain, it is the ant season. Now, I've been here since January, and ants are around all the time, really. You don't see many of them in the early months of the year, But obviously each month, maybe see a few more. But now it's got to the point whereby if I was to just leave a small amount of food about in the house, or I don't wash a pot up, I maybe leave it a few hours and maybe even the next day, it doesn't take long for the ants to find them. So once a single ant finds your food, it won't be long before there is a whole army of ants on their way, depending on how much food you've got. But yeah, it's a problem. I mean, I now have to make sure I wash every single pot as soon as I've used it. That's not a bad practice to get into, to be honest with you. But yeah, one thing I will say is that I live on a ground floor. And if you are really bothered about ants, then I would recommend you buy something a bit higher up where there is unlikely to be any ants. So there you go. That was number 5. And number 6. I'd wish I had known that I would not be able to film for very long in July and August. If I walk around with my camera now for more than a few minutes in the early afternoon, it's going to shut down. Either the camera is, or the microphone, or the microphone receiver. Something is going to get too hot within minutes, and I will be filming away, talking to you, thinking everything's perfect, and then when I get back and play it, have no sound, or maybe no picture. Something has gone wrong. I just thought I'd throw that one in. It's a bit of frustration now the weather's getting hotter. Anyway, there you go. That's my list of 6. So my next video is going to be the pros and cons of living here in Spain, right here in 2025, based on my experience over these first 6 months. So again, please subscribe and please click on notifications if you're interested in that video, and you'll get notified as soon as that video comes out, which won't be long. Okay, that's it for now. From the sunny Costa del Sol, see you next time. Bye for now.